Hello and welcome to this is basically episode 1 of Let's Write Space Invaders with MONOGAME for Windows. Yeah, really exciting. So hopefully you would have done the setup video or followed it and installed Visual Studio 2019 and added the extension MONOGAME. So let's get started, shall we? We're going to start the shell, and we are then going to just go through some fundamentals. It's going to be quite a long video. If you're quite comfortable with C#, please skip to the end. All right, so what do we do, Neil? So run Visual Studio 2019 and you are presented with this dialog. So we're going to create a new project. So click on create new project. Now, from watching the end of the setup one, I've gone on this third drop down list and I'm selecting MONOGAME, which brings up just the MONOGAME. It filters out for MONOGAME. We're going down because we want this one, which is MONOGAME Windows desktop application using DirectX. Okay, so we'll select that one and go next. In here, we need to call it a name. So I'm going to call it Classic Space Invaders. All right. And I'm going to choose a location where I want it to be installed. And then that's all you have to do. I'm just going to close my eyes and click create, and hopefully it will do it. No, it will do it. I should put insert lift music while you wait. Okay, so this is it. I have a massive window. I will apologize for that. I will make the font a little bit bigger so you can read it. So we are here. It is our environment. Importantly, I'm just going to quickly click on debug and we'll see it's not quite right. It's almost like it's not quite sure what project it's got. So just click and open one or two files within it, and then go back to debug, and we're there. So we'll start debugging. So first things first, before we actually do anything else, I'm just going to attempt to run it. Tra-la-la, and it's run. Lovely. Ignore everything that's in the window. This is the debugger running. I'll go through that because this is an essential tool. So I will drip feed information for you. So yeah, it will not be bombarded with blah blah blah. Yeah, this window does that. It is hopefully makes it a little bit more streamlined, and you'll learn as you progress through the tutorial. We learn together. Alright, so we have Space Invaders running. Classic Space Invaders with nothing in it. Okay, we'll close that. So hit the X, and now we have this blank screen. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look, and we have game1.cs. CS is a C# file, and it's got the extension CS. Game 1 is an awful title. We're not going to put game 1. We're going to rename that. So I'm going to right click and go rename, and then I'm going to type Classic Space Invaders and hit enter. Notice this comes up. It's very important. You read everything that comes up. We want to do yes. It says you are renaming a file. Would you like to perform a rename in this project of all references to the code element game 1? Yes, we do. So hit yes, and that's it. It's done. So that is far better. We can see here that Classic Space Invaders has replaced game 1. That's lovely. To me, this just feels so much better. Alright, so this video we're going to go over a number of topics. We're going to go over what we call variable types. So we'll start off with that. We will do some basic arithmetic just to get you into the swing of stuff. And while we do that, we will run it through a debugger. So don't be daunted by it all. I'll go for it key by key, and I'll give you little challenges as we go along. And I will pause like this, and please pause the video and do the challenge. It'd be nice if you had a large screen so you could have the video running on maybe one monitor or one part of the screen and your development in the other part of the screen, so we can work through this together. It would be great. Ideal for learning. All right, so we don't want to go in this window. Ooh, we don't want to be doing that. We want to double click on program.cs. Now we know CS is a C#. So double click or open it. I just single clicked and it opened. And we have this. Now you can just have to follow my lead and type what I type, and hopefully it will start to make sense as we go along. Right you are. So first things first, I am going to write a function. This is purely for test, so I'm going to put it within this class. Don't worry about what a class is and things like this. It has got squiggly brackets. Now we need this function within these squiggly brackets. So at this bottom one, I'm going to put a few spaces in, and I'm going to write the following. So it is static. I will go over these as we go along. Just, it's important because this is the only way it will actually run. So I'm going to go static void, and I'm going to put test ints. You'll understand in a little while what that means. And I'm just going to put two normal brackets. Well, you just type one bracket which is above the 9 key, shift 9, and that opens up a single one. And Visual Studio preempts the fact that you will have to close that brace or bracket, and yeah, and that's it. We don't need to put anything in there. So hit return afterwards, and we're going to use the braces or the squiggly brackets. And so it's this one, and you have another one, so just hit return straight away, and this is the layout. So this is the start of our function. It actually does nothing. So before I go any further, I'm just going to block copy this, and I'm going to go into here, into the main function. The main function will be called, always be called, and in that it launches classic Space Invaders. But don't worry about this code here. Add some spaces and tab in, always tab one more from the bracket, so we make things nice and neat. We indent things correctly, otherwise the code will become very, very hard to read. So I'm going to Control V that and put in the brackets again. And finally, because it's a command on a line, I'm going to finish it with a semicolon, and that is that. So in this, I have a new function, and I've called it test_ints. I've added that function down here. I've made it static because we have to, regardless. You don't have to do this normally, but in this one case, and this is a very, very convenient place to show you exactly what's going on. So this is follow my lead, do this, and we are ready to go. So just to make sure, I'm going to press F5 to make sure it builds. Notice it will save the files that I've edited, and it should build. Lovely. Nothing's happened. It's called our function, but it's got nothing in it. So let's put some stuff in there. Okay, so one of the magic of programming is the fact that you will need to store information so that you can handle that information. If you hear the pitter-patter of little feet, it's not. It is actually pouring with rain. I think we're destined to get quite a big storm later on tonight. So yeah, it's been raining for quite a while, so I apologise for the little splatter of rain. Right, so we will. Yes, yeah. Sorry, I lost my thread. We will be discussing variables, or items that we can store and then use, and then things like your sprite X and Y position, your fire button, how you store that, you will need to store them to something. So I'll introduce you to 3 types of variable. They will be a integer, a float, and a string. These are basically the 3 that you will mainly use. An int, or in, let's say in .NET, I'll be using a int32. So I'll show you what I will type. That is a 32-bit integer. It is just a whole number. There's no fractional part. There's no little bit. You haven't got 1.2 or 1.5, 1.3. Why did I go 1.5? 1.3. You have got no fractional part. It is a whole number. So integers only deal with whole numbers. So without further ado, we're going to do our first few lines. So I'm going to do int 32 with a space, and then I'm going to put number 1, and I'm going to put a space in, and I'm going to put equals, and then I'm going to put 1, and then because it's a command, semicolon to finish it. And then I'm going to hit space, and I'm going to tab that in properly. Okay, so at this point I have assigned number 1, which is an integer with the value 1. Fantastic. So we are going to add another variable, and we can call it num2, and we're going to assign that with 7. Okay, and I'm going to let you do that as a challenge. So please create num2 and assign it with 7 equals 7. Okay, and I will pause and let you attempt that. Okay, how did you do? I will show you how I do it. So it's int32, and then we do num2, and we're assigning or equals 7. Okay, so we have two values there. Now we're going to create another one. Now I'm going to just, as I talk, type it in. It's num3, and I'm not going to assign it anything. So I'm just going to do that. Okay, so we have now 3 variables. So we're going to do some simple maths on this now. So we are going to do a plus, a minus, and a divide, and a multiply. Lovely. Now I am going to just show you. I'm going to do num1, and I'm going to make that equal to 2. Okay, so this is another way of setting your variables. I could do num3 equals 0, and we'll leave that in there. So this is just how you would assign a value to a variable. Now num1 is now 2, and num3 is now 0. So we're going to do plus, the plus sum. So we're going to do num1 plus num2, and we're going to store it in num3. Right, so this is how you would do it. You go num3, num3 equals num1 plus, I'm using the plus on the keyboard, it's a plus symbol, num2, and it's a command, so close with a semicolon. That's it. That is our first sum that we have done. We have added num1 and num2 together and stored it in num3. So that technically, what would that value be? Well, I'm looking at that and I'll say that value will be 9. But we will run it through the debugger and just see. So when running stuff through the debugger, if I pressed F5 to start debugging now, push it, nothing happens. We got no indication of what's going on. It's run through, done our sum, and just carried on. So we need to stop the debugger at a certain point. So I'm going to stop the debugger on this first line. So there's quite a few ways of doing that. You could go to debug, and there should be toddle the breakpoint, which is F9. So toddle it, and we got a dot here, a red mark there, and this line is highlighted in red. So that's where it will stop. You can press F9 and toddle it, or you can click in this little part here, just click and it will produce a breakpoint. Okay, so we now press F5, which says start on our debugger, and oh, it's actually stopped. It's not showing the game window, it's actually stopped here. More importantly, if you go down to this window, because the layout should be exactly the same as mine, I haven't changed any of the layout, you need to look at the local tabs and you'll see our variables here. They're all zeros. What is going on? It's because they haven't actually been set with anything yet. They haven't been assigned or anything. It's only come in and it knows that there are 3 variables, so it's set them up already, and it hasn't assigned any to them, but it's just assigned them with 0. So the way what we're going to do now, it's called single step through each line, and we're going to see what the results are on our variables, which are num1, 2 and 3. So how do you single step, Neil? Well, patience please, and I'll tell you. It is go to debug, and we'll have a look down here. Step into, we don't want to quite do that, we want to do step over. So step over is F10, step over the command, because you could just step F11, because it's got nothing to step into. We'll go over what step into means at a later date. So all we need to know is that we've set F10 to single step. So I'm going to just press F10. So our cursor, our marker is on the second line, and if we have a look down here, oh, it's been changed. It's highlighted red because it has changed something, and that is set num1 with 1. Now look, num1 equals 1, so that's great. So we press F10 again, and oh, look down here, num2 is 7, perfect, and we've got num1 is 1. Then we got this line, it says num1 equals 2. So I'm going to F10 to run that one, and oh, it's changed num1 is 2. Brilliant. It's going to use this line to make sure that num3 is 0. I just left it in there as a test. Hasn't changed, but I think, no, it's not highlighted red. I got a little bit of a blur of red, but I think that's my poor eyesight. Alright, our final line is num3 equals num1 plus num2. So I'm just going to press F10, go over that. Oh, perfect. So we know, well, we should know, 2 plus 7 is equal to 9. And we've actually proved it. So number 1, if you put your mouse over it, it will say number 1 is equal to 2. Num2 is equal to 7, and now num3 is equal to 9 because it's added them together. Lovely, so it's 9. Perfect. We could at this point run the debugger, so you can go here to continue, or you could go here to stop. Now I'm just going to stop it. We don't need to run the game because we've got our results. We need to add some more code into it. So hit stop, and we will continue. You know what the next line is going to be. It's going to be, we're going to subtract num2 from num1. So we want to do a num1 minus num2 and then store it in num3. So this is going to be a little bit of a challenge for you. See if you can work out this one with what's on the keyboard, what's on your keyboard that you're looking at, and see if you can type in, you want to subtract num2 from num1 and store it in num3. So you want num1 minus num2 and store it in num3. And I'll pause and continue. So how did you do? So excuse the slight slurring. I'm not drunk. I had an accident when I was asleep a few years ago, and I eventually knocked a couple of teeth out of my mouth by punching my face. I don't think many people do that when they're asleep. I don't know what happened, but it hurt, and so I have a let's say a denture, and it affects my speech. You feel sorry for me, don't you? I would. All right. So num3 equals. Now we want to do the minus. So we want num1 minus num2. Now I said subtract num1 from, no, so num2 from num1, but it's num1 minus num2. Okay, I'll just do that. And what we're going to do is run that through the debugger. So we know what to do, just press F5, it saves your program, quickly runs it, and then stops the debugger in the place we're going to do. We know F10 single steps through the debugger, so we're just going to quickly go through. Num1 equals 1, check. Num2 7, brilliant. Num1 is now changed to 2, lovely. Num3 is 0, already is. So num3 now equals num1 plus num2 is 9. Alright. Now what we're going to get, we get 2 minus 7. What value is that going to be? Let's have a look. So we're going to run that one. Minus 5. Well, actually it is, because 7 is considerably bigger than 2. So you're subtracting 7 from 2, which gives you minus 5. Lovely. Okay, so that's that. So we've done, our task is nearly complete for the ints. We just need to do divide and multiply. Okay, so I'm going to do the divide next. So we're just going to stop the debugger. I know it's Shift F5. If we have a look in the debug, so somewhere down here is stop debugger. It will come up when you're running. So let's just run it and have a look at the debug. Stop debugging, Shift F5. Lovely. So click that and it stops. I am going to just quickly do the divide, because the divide isn't an old school divide. It is a let's say a slash. I'll just show you. It is this. That is a divide. It looks a little bit like a fraction, but this is a divide in the computer world. Alright, so it is 2, so we've got 7, and we're dividing it into 2. So that's going to create a bit of a conundrum, like it will be 0. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make matters easy. I'm going to change some values. So I'm going to go num1, and we're going to have that as 4. And num2, we're going to have that as 2. And then we're going to try to divide. I think I've got it wrong way around, haven't I? We'll see. All right, we'll try this. All right, so we will single step through. So we've got num1 is 4, num2 is 2, and we press it. No, it's 2. Lovely. I hadn't. Just suddenly, you know how you're trying to come across as professional. I've been doing this for decades. My mind just said, no, you got it wrong, Neil. You're going to make a fool of yourself. No, I didn't. All right. So we know that 2's, how many 2's are there in 4? There are 2 of them. I did pick quite the wrong value, so let's change that to 6 and 3. Right. Oh, let's make that 2. And we will run this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the breakpoint to here, delete the breakpoint up there, because we know that all works, and press F5 to run the debugger. And then we're going to reassign num1 to, which is 6, I'm at F10 to single step, num2 is 2, and then I'm going to do the divide. 3, perfect. There are 3 2's in 6. Alright then, so leave num1 and num2 as they are, and now do the multiply. Let's see if you can pick the right symbol for the multiply. Okay, so I will pause. And how did you do? When I pause, I just sit here in silence. It's quite funny, really. So let's just stop the debugger. I am Control C-ing and Control V-ing to repeat the line, because we're going to only change one little bit of it, and that is this symbol, because we don't want to divide, we want to multiply. Now the multiply is that, which is like a little star. So that is, in the programming world, a multiply. So what are we doing there? Num1 multiplied by num2. We know that num1 is still going to be 6. We know that number 2 is 2. So 6 times 2 we know might be 12. So let's just run it and find out. Alright, so we broke at the right point. So I'm going to single step. So we'll set the 2. You can see that in the bottom, num1 is 6, num2 is 2. Ignore what num3 is, because we're now going to reset it. Do the divide first. Oh, hang on. Let me press the right. Oh, God, wrong key. Let me just do that. I'm pressing F10 and it's just instead of F9. Alrighty. So let's just run that again. Alright. Now we're going to press the right key. So at this point, we've got 6 and 2. Do the divide, and it's 3. We're now going to do the multiply, and that's 12. Perfect. So 6 times 2 is 12. So that's great. Excuse me getting a bit tongue-tied with my key presses. I'm just going to remove the breakpoint there, and that is integers. I think you've got a bit of a firm understanding of integers. So I'm now going to create another function, and just want to get out of the debugger, and I'm going to call it test floats. So static void int, test, sorry, test floats, and do the brackets, and everything looks okay. Just make sure I spelled it right. I am dyslexic, so bear with me with regards spellings and things like that, and funny key presses. I've managed to muddle my way through my entire life with this condition. Right, so we need to call it as well. So I'm going to, in here, type test floats and brackets, semicolon, because it's a command and it's a function call. And somewhere along the lines I put an I. It looked wrong, sorry. T test floats. Lovely. Ignore my little errors. I would have run it and would have think, oh, it doesn't work, and it would have told me the problem. Alright, so now introduction to floats. Now a float is allows you to store whole numbers and parts of a number. Now you can have quite a large number and quite a large fractional part of that number, but we're going to deal with simple 1 or 2 decimal places just to make life easy. So let's have a look. So I'm going to tab in to make it all nice and neat, make sure things are indented in. As I go along, if you follow my indenting, it just makes it a lot readable, and you'll see all code follows the same guidelines really. So we're going to use float, and we are going to have another set of numbers, but I'm going to put a little f on them, which indicates they are a float. I'm going to do float num1, and I'm going to set that to 1.0f, and then put a semicolon. Now this is setting a number to the float. Now let's say this is a coding practice. As you're dealing with floats, you really should put a f at the end of the number. It will tell the compiler it is a float value. If you don't, it will think of it as a bigger number, a lot bigger, and it needs to be a float, because it just speeds things up. The compiler will we'll convert it to what they call a double, which is a very large float, and it then needs to go back down as all a little bit. It all gets not confusing, but it all takes an extra bit of time. Putting that little f there, this, if you type that in, it says to the compiler, so 1.0 is a float, and I'm storing it in fnum1, which is also a float. Lovely. So we are going to set a challenge. Please could you create another 2 variables which are floats, and they will be fnum2 and fnum3. And before you start, could we have fnum2 assigned with the value of 2.5? Okay, and I'll pause. How did we do? Hopefully this is all starting to make a bit of sense and you've typed something down that's very similar to this. So we're going to put a float and we're going to do fnum2. Now I wanted to assign it 2.5, so do 2.5. All floats, put f on it because it indicates it's a float, a semicolon with the end. So that's the first part of it. I'm now going to create our second variable, which will be num3, and I'm not going to assign it anything, but for good practice, I'm just going to assign it 0 and put an f on just to keep all styles the same, but you don't have to assign it with anything. Alright, so you guess what we're going to do. Now here is another challenge. What I would like would be you to do the num1 plus fnum1 plus fnum2, fnum1 minus fnum2, fnum1 divided by fnum2, fnum1 times fnum2. It's 4 lines of code. Just type it in and we will see if it's the same as mine. It should be quite simple. If you have problems, wait a few seconds and I will type it out. Okay, so I'll pause now. Okay, how did you do? So what we're going to do, fnum3, because we want to store it, and we want to add fnum1 and fnum2. So quite straightforward, plus fnum2, and we just put a semicolon at the end, and that's it. That's our first sum done. So oh god, sorry, I just seen my mistake. All right, fnum1 plus fnum2, and we're storing it in fnum3. Now I'm going to cheat and do this. I did get it right. Alright, so we're going to do, I just copied it, so we have 4, so I'm going to do divide, the next one, minus, sorry, the next one divide, and then the final one multiply. Okay, so that is our test that we're going to do. So let me just put a breakpoint. Now we know breakpoint's F9, or your toggle breakpoint in the menu, so I'm just press F9, and we have a breakpoint there. We have no other breakpoints, so we're just going to run. Please make sure that you've added the function call here in main, and away we go, F5. Alright, so it's built it, and what we'll do is we'll scroll up the window a little bit. Now we have some different variables in our locals. We have fnum1, fnum2, and fnum3. Now this locals, it's all the variables that are in between these braces, and they're called in scope. So it only shows your local variables in scope. I'm adding these terms so you'll soon get used to them, but just know that these variables will only be active within the scope of this function, and I'll show you that because we'll step out of this function when we finish debugging. So they're all assigned to 0, So let's F10 for single step. So we're setting the first one to 1, the second one we're going to set to 2.5, and the third one we're just going to keep it 0. Now, this next one is 1 plus F2, so it's F1, Fnum1 plus Fnum2, and we know so it's 1 plus 2.5. So that should be 3.5. Yes, it is. If you look in here, Fnum3 is 3.5. Lovely. So the next one is minus. So we've got 1 minus 2.5. I think we know what that's going to be. It's going to be a negative value. Yes, minus 1.5. Makes perfect sense. The next one's a divide. Okay, so I'm just going to, so what we're going to divide 2.5 into 1. A little bit pointless, but let's just do it. So F10, sorry, and it is 0.4. Okay, so 2.5 divided into 1 is 0.4. Yeah, that's right. Okay, trust me on that. So we're now going to have 1 times 2.5. So this one should be 2.5. Lovely, it's 2.5. So that's great. What we could do on here, just to show something a little bit more easier to see. So I'm going to have another one. So I'm going to the first one will be, let's have this at 0.4. So number 1 we're going to have as 0.4 f, and Fnum2 we're going to have as 0.2 f. Okay, and semicolon at the end, and we're just going to run that again. So hit F5 to start the debugger. It's come in, so we're going to single step through the first few sums, all looking good. Fnum1 is now 0.4, 0.4, Fnum2 0.2, and Fnum3, when you divide Fnum1 divided by Fnum2 is 2. So there are 0.2, there are 2 0.2s in 0.4, so it makes sense. So that is working. Lovely. And then we're going to multiply 0.4 by 0.2, and that is quite a small number. So yeah, because you've got a very small number, less than 1, and you're then multiplying that by a slightly smaller number, less than 1, so it will become less, if that makes sense, because you're getting a fractional part of 0.2, which happens to be 0.8. If you think about it, yeah, it does make good sense. And that number is 0.0800000057. Lovely. The beauty of floats is that you don't lose the accuracy. You have this, which is ideal for moving stuff around the screen. Okay, so I think that's a very good introduction to ints and floats. We've got one more. This video is going to go on a little bit, and I'll try and speed up a fraction. So we're going to do strings. Oh, what I was going to do was just show you things in scope. Okay, so I'm actually going to put a breakpoint in there, restart it, just to show you. You don't have to do this. I'm just going to show you what's in scope and what's not in scope, as what locals you will see. Hit F5. So I'm running it, and the first thing, so we're in test ints because it's the first function of our new functions that's being called, and we have our unassigned integers num1, num2, num3. I'm going to press F5, which will run to the next breakpoint, and I press that, and oh, it's changed. So our locals are now with all the variables within this scope, within the scope of these brackets, within this function, and they are fnum1, fnum2, and fnum3, and they're unassigned. And this shows you the scope. So if I was to step through this, we see all the values change, keep stepping, then it goes up out of this function, and it's going to then start to run the game. Have a look. We've got a new local, and it's called game, which is this one. Lovely. So that is just scope, just showing you the scope of the variables. So if you suddenly find that your variable's missing, you've gone away from it, and it has ceased to exist. So we just stop the debugger, and we'll just do the next one. And this will be a simple one, just to show you strings. So I'm going to do test strings. Okay, lovely. So I've written the function there. I'm just going to copy it. We're going to go down. I'll just do this at the bottom. So I'm going to do another static void, and then I'm going to do our function test strings. The brackets, we're not passing parameters, which I'll go through at a later date when we need to know. Open the squigglies, close, and then enter. So you've got that layout, and then we're ready to type some in. So I'm going to speed up a little bit. So I'm going to have, so in here we're going to have an int, and we're going to call that num1, and we're going to have that as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and then put semicolon at the end, and I'm going to have a float, and we'll call that fnum2, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to go 0, and I'm going to make that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then put an F as it's a float and semicolon at the end. Lovely. So what do you think? Well, Neil, why are you doing this? Well, we're now going to have a string, so I will put a string, and I will call that so I normally do this. I put a little string here, but we'll just call it display number. Okay, and that's that. So we put a semicolon in, we don't assign it to anything. For neatness, and I would do this all the time, I won't mention this, I'm going to tab these so they all look easier to read. Okay, it's just for ease for you, and it's how I normally do my own code, just so it all looks nice and neat and easy to follow. Alright, so how are we going to use a string? So I've typed string, capital S string, so that symbols is a class, but we don't need to know that at the moment. We just need it's a type that we're going to use, and it stores strings. Now when I mean strings, it's stuff that we print out on the screen. So it'll have characters in there, and it will allow us to display stuff, and you think, wow, that's pretty good. So how are we going to do that? Very easy, it's just like this. So I'm going to go display number equals, and I'm going to put open speech marks, and I'm going to put value num1 equals, and I put a space, and then after the speech marks put another space, then you put a plus, because what we're doing, we're concatenating all the items we want to print out together, and C# is very good at this. You just have to put a plus, and it knows that it will add the next section to your string. So sorry, I do apologise. My headphones and mic went into standby. Okay, so there's no pause for you, but there's a pause for me. Though at this point, we concatenate, or we add strings together, and we just use the plus. So we just follow this format. So we've got the first part of our string, which is value num1 equals, and we put a space. It's important to put a space, and then we put another space after the speech marks with a plus. Then we do another space, and then we put more speech marks in, and we put and num2 equals, and then we put a semicolon at the end. Right, now I'm going to add some stuff in here, but I didn't want to confuse you. This is the part of our string. So what at this point, if I just run this, now what I'm going to do is put a breakpoint in, but I'm going to put it in here at the end. Okay, so we're just going to run and have a look at our, oh sorry, I got the other breakpoints in, just get rid of them, and with F5. Alright, so we have our two values. We have num1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we have fnum2, which is correct, it's 0.0, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then we've got a string. Now that string is both of these strings added together, so it's concatenated. So it's got value num1 equals and num2 equals. I should make that fnum2, but there's no numbers in there. So here's how you do it. It's very, very simple in C#. So if we stop the debugger, I'm just going to make that fnum2, and in here all you do is num1 and then do plus, and then you do fnum2 equals, so you do plus fnum2. Lovely. And that's basically it. So let's run this again. Lovely. So we have that. We have our values, and it's stored in a string, all in here. So, and it's converted them to ASCII, which is your string. So it's great. It's done it all for you. Quite straightforward. There are other ways of doing it, but this seems to be the easiest way of doing it. We'll go into a little bit more detail when you need to display other bases, because we won't be just dealing in base 10, which is what this is. We'll be dealing in hexadecimal, which is base 16. We might do octal, which I doubt it, but we'll also be dealing in binary, which is base 2, which is a 1 0 1 0 1 0. Yeah, don't be concerned. I'll go through it all and explain it all as you go along. So at this point, one final thing here, because I'll leave the strings there, just showing you the basics of how to do a string. We are going to let the program run without a debugger, and we're going to display in this output window our string. This is a simple thing that we will use, which just helps you for last resort debugging and logging and stuff like that. It is going to be a debug write line, and you need two things to get this to work. First of all, we're going to go up to the top of the file, and here these are effectively functionality that you are going to be adding in. At the moment it's included system. We need to include system.diagnostics. So follow my lead, so we do using, just follow that, and we need system, and then press dot, and then look down in a drop list until you come to diagnostics, which I've just passed a long while ago. There it is, diagnostics. So select that, finish it with a semicolon, and then come back down to where you were, and underneath here we're going to now type a new command, capital D, debug. So just hit enter, or just hit enter, sorry, when it's on highlighted. Do the dot, it's important that you do a dot, and then type right line. Now I can see it permanent here, right line. Open up the brackets. I'm just going to type display number, which is our string, and I'm going to finish it as its command with a semicolon, and I should say there's no errors appearing. If you see squiggly lines like this appear, it will appear eventually. There. So you have a look there. It says expecting semicolon. There are if you make a spelling error or capitals or something, you'll go to do it and you think, oh, there's a line underneath it. Go on there, it says the name display number does not exist in the current thing. You say, well, it is, but oh, they're case sensitive. So make sure you put the capitals where I do. So display number, if you do it in capitals, it comes up and it's all done. Yeah, Visual Studio is very good at sorting things out. So I'll just get rid of that white noise. The space there. So I am going to just press F5. We've got no breakpoints in. Okay. Right. So you'll see the game running. Now, luckily, my screen's big enough. Here, within the output debug output window, if I highlight it, there's our string. So value num1 equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and f num2 equals 0.54321. Lovely, there's our string there. Perfect. Okay, so we can now debug to the console, or debug to the output screen, which is handy for helping you know where you are in your program and what's happening. We will create a log file, because I think log files are handy, but I'll do that at a later date. We certainly no need to do that at the moment. So I think for this video, we will end this video here, and we will have a shorter part 2. If I just stop the debugger, where we will discuss some useful programming statements that you would use, commands you would use. They will be for loops, if commands, where you use an if or an else or an else if. Don't worry about that. We'll go over that and the reasons why you'd have an if. It's a conditional check, so we'll go over that, and we will finally finish with a switch statement. What is a switch statement? Find out in the next video. So if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe if you haven't already. Any comments, any concerns, just put them in the comments below, and I will endeavour to answer them as soon as possible. And finally, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, and yeah, enjoy. Any concerns, please go over this video again, and like I say, we'll see you in the next video where we'll continue some core C#. Thank you.